Channel Aviation Mentors. Guys, in today's video I'm gonna start the instrument navigation for the DGC exams. So what I will do is I will keep my video short. I will not make a long video, and we will try to cover up all the question bank, all the topics which comes in your instrument nav exam of the DGCA. So guys, as we are talking about the instrument, so in the DGCA exam, the instrument navigation. All right. So in this instrument navigation, we will be going to cover up all the aircraft instruments, their concept, their errors, and everything in detail. So let's get started. So what I will do is today I'm gonna start with the topic, which is your Pitot static. So I will not keep the video long, so I'm going to just explain you the concept of the pitot static. What is your pitot static? Okay guys, so let's just start with the video. So guys, as we know that the aircraft has six basic instruments which are known as your six pack of the aircraft. So let me gonna pull up the picture for you guys. So those six instrument of the aircraft, which are also known as your six pack of the aircraft, they work on the principle of the pressure, and some of the instrument they work on the gyroscopic principle. So just hold on, let me gonna pull up the picture for you guys. All right, so here is the picture of the six pack here. So guys, see, in this picture you can see there are six instruments. These are the six basic instruments which are required to fly an aircraft. All right, so these instruments are known as the six pack because they are six in number. So now guys, let us just talk about all the instrument one by one. So the first we have the airspeed indicator, which is known as your ASI. The second instrument that we have out here is our attitude indicator. Attitude indicator. Okay. Now the third instrument we're talking about is your altimeter, which shows your altitude. So guys, just to give you a little, because we are going to talk about all the instruments in detail in the coming videos, I'm just going to give you a brief idea about what these instrument functionality is. So attitude indicator is basically to show the attitude of an aircraft, whether it is nose up or nose down, or the wings are leveled or wings are not leveled. Then the third instrument is known as your TSI, which is your turn and slip indicator. Now the fourth instrument is your heading indicator. This is your heading indicator, which shows the heading of the aircraft. And the last instrument, the sixth instrument, is your vertical speed indicator. So guys, this is known as your six pack of the aircraft, and you should remember all these instruments very well, because when you will start flying in the general aircraft or the flying aircrafts, these are the six instruments which we will be using throughout our flying for every purpose. All right, so now guys, among these six instruments, if we talk about the airspeed indicator, if we talk about the airspeed indicator and the vertical speed indicator, also your altimeter. So guys, these three instruments, they work on the air principle. They are working on the air principle. We will talk about that in the detail. This air principle is basically known as your pitot static. We will talk that about in detail. First, understand. So how we started? We started that our aircraft has six important instruments, which is known as your six pack. Now the six pack has your airspeed indicator, your attitude indicator, your altimeter, your turn and slip indicator, your heading indicator, and your vertical speed indicator. So among these instruments, airspeed indicator, vertical speed indicator, and your altimeter, they work on the air principle, whereas the other three instruments, which is your turn and slip indicator, your heading indicator, and as well as your attitude indicator, they work on the gyroscopic principle. So these instruments, they work on gyroscopic principle. So guys, I am just giving you a brief at the moment because we will be dealing with all the principle, all the instrument in detail. So what we have understood so far right now is that there are three instruments are working on the air principle and three instruments are working on the gyroscopic principle. So now guys, let us understand how the three instrument which is working on the air principle and what is the air principle. So first of all, let me just put up a picture for you guys to explain it. Okay. So guys, have a look here. I'm gonna put up a picture. Okay, so let's just put up an aircraft picture to make you guys understand better. Yes. Alright, so guys, have a look here. So first of all, we are gonna talk about the Pitot static now. Now guys, see the word Pitot static. What does it mean? Guys, see the Pitot means the total pressure. As the name says, P tot means total, and PI is the total pressure acting on the aircraft, and the static pressure is simply your static pressure, or static pressure you can say your atmospheric pressure which is acting. So guys, pressure is three types. Pressure we will divide into three types for the study in the aircraft. So if we talk about three types, the first type we have already seen is the Pitot or the total pressure. The other one is, you have already seen in the definition, is your static pressure, and the third one is your dynamic pressure. So we will talk about each of them individually and understand it better. So guys, see, we are here to clear our concept. We need to understand exactly. We are just not here to mug up things, you know, just to learn for the examination. But we want to have a clear understanding of what is your Pitot static, what is your dynamic pressure, what is your static pressure, what is the total pressure, and how they work to for the working of the three instruments that I have told you. So guys, now we have understood we have three kind of pressure. One is your total pressure, one is your static pressure, and another is the dynamic pressure. So guys, let's talk about these one by one. So first we are gonna talk about the dynamic pressure. Sorry, we will talk about the static pressure first. So guys, if we talk about the static pressure, so I'm gonna just drag this uh, aircraft down up here. Okay, so guys, see your static pressure. So guys, if we talk about the static pressure, then static pressure is also static pressure, we can also say it is the atmospheric pressure. It is the atmospheric pressure acting on the aircraft. Also, if we talk about the static pressure, so static pressure acts on aircraft from all the side. It's not, we will you will this point will be more clear when we will talk about the dynamic pressure. So for now, just understand that the static pressure acts on the aircraft from all the sides. Now the other thing that is important about the static pressure is Now we have known that the static pressure acts on all the parts of the aircraft from all the direction, and it is present at all times. Present at all times, whether the aircraft is on ground or whether the aircraft is in air and moving. It is present at all the times. Okay, so let's just understand by the picture what do I mean by all these points. So have a look here. Okay guys, see, suppose this is your aircraft. Now the pressure which is acting, suppose this, let us assume that this aircraft is on the ground or whether it is in the air. It doesn't matter in the case of static pressure whether your aircraft is on the ground or it is in the air. The static pressure will act on the aircraft at all the times, in all the direction, constantly, whether it is in the air or in the ground. So have a look here. So the pressure is acting on the aircraft from all the side, and this pressure, the pressure, this is known as your static pressure. Now the question is, on what parameters does your static pressure depends upon? uh, Static pressure, guys, is, like I have told you, is simply the atmospheric pressure. Now for example, if we talk about, suppose this is your sea level, this is your mean sea level. So static pressure actually depends upon your altitude. It depends upon your altitude. The higher you go up in the altitude, the pressure or the static pressure, or you can say the atmospheric pressure, it reduces. To understand this better, let us take an example. So now we have taken the mean sea level. Now I will take a column of air. Now in the column of air, if it see, at the bottom of the column of the air, we have more number of air molecules. We have no number of air molecules, and as we go up, the number of air molecules in the column of the air, it reduces, reducing the pressure. So the pressure here will be more, pressure here will be more as compared to the pressure higher up in the air column, it will be less. So what we have learned in the static pressure, the three important point, first is it depends upon the altitude. It depends upon the altitude. The second point, it acts in all the direction, acts in all direction. And the third point we need to remember in the case of the static pressure is that the static pressure, sorry, we have seen the altitude, it acts in the all direction. It acts whether the aircraft is on the ground or the air, means it acts all the time, it will act all the time. So guys, this is about your static pressure. It is acting on the aircraft from all the sides. It will act on the aircraft whether the aircraft is in air or at the ground, means it will act all the time. Other thing is that the static pressure depends upon your altitude. The higher you go up, the pressure, atmospheric pressure or the static pressure reduces. Now guys, we have studied about the static pressure. Now let's go ahead in the topic and study about the dynamic pressure. Now guys, what do we mean by the dynamic pressure? And then we will write down some important points about the static and the dynamic pressure which comes in your DGCA examination and which you need to remember. So guys, if we talk about the dynamic pressure, Dynamic pressure is the pressure which is acting on the aircraft due to its motion in the air. So for to understand this, let me just put up an image here. So guys, dynamic, as the name says, it is the pressure which acts on the aircraft due to the motion of the aircraft in the air. So for example, if you see this aircraft is moving. Now this aircraft is moving in the air and it is moving this side. Now suppose it has a velocity of 90 knots. This aircraft is moving with the speed of 90 knots. So now guys, the dynamic pressure will be acting to the opposite, to the direction of motion. So this is your dynamic pressure. So unlike your static pressure, which is, suppose okay, let me just take a blue marker to show you the static pressure. Now the static pressure is acting on all sides of the aircraft, on all sides, from every sides it is acting in your aircraft. But your dynamic pressure will act opposite to your direction of motion. So if the aircraft is moving this direction, your dynamic pressure will be opposite to the motion of the aircraft. So that is the difference between your dynamic pressure and your static pressure. Also guys, see, the dynamic pressure, what is dynamic pressure? Now when the aircraft was not in motion, the air molecules were not disturbed. Now when the aircraft start moving, now if the air, this, suppose this is the aircraft and it start moving in this air, due to the motion of the aircraft, the flow, the molecules will get disturbed and they will exert a certain pressure to oppose the motion of the aircraft, and that is known as your dynamic pressure. Okay, I hope this point is clear to you. So now we know the two kinds of the pressure. That we know what is the dynamic pressure, and now we know what is the static pressure. Now let's talk about the total pressure, guys. See guys, total pressure. Now what is total pressure? Total pressure is nothing but your dynamic pressure dynamic, plus your pressure static. This is your total pressure. Dynamic pressure plus static pressure is called as your total pressure, and this total pressure, we know, we have called it as Pitot. So what is Pitot pressure? Pitot pressure is nothing but your dynamic pressure plus static pressure is known as your Pitot pressure. So now, so far what we have studied is that we have three kinds of pressure: the Pitot, the dynamic, and the static. We have understood the definition of all the three types of pressure. Now let us just talk about what instrument uses what pressure, because some instrument uses your dynamic pressure and some instrument uses your static pressure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a picture for you for better understanding. So guys, have a look here. Now we will understand which instrument uses which pressure for the working. So if you see here guys, alright, have a look here. Now in this picture you can see that this is your pitot tube. Now we will discuss in detail about the pitot tube, the static port. For now, just I'm putting up this picture for the explanation of which instrument uses the pitot pressure, which is your total pressure, and which instrument uses your dynamic pressure. As I have told you, we will talk in detail about each and everything. So now guys, this is the pitot tube. Now whatever the pitot means, the total pressure which is coming in the tube, it goes to your airspeed indicator, your vertical speed indicator, and your altimeter. You can see it clearly that guys, the pitot pressure is going just to your airspeed indicator. It does not go to your vertical speed indicator or your altimeter. Guys, have a see, I just said this to confuse you, but please have a look here because this point needs to get clear, and this is asked in 1 or 2 mark question in your DGC examination. So have a look here. The Pitot pressure is gone into your airspeed indicator, whereas your static pressure goes in your airspeed indicator, vertical speed indicator, and altimeter. So airspeed indicator works on the Pitot pressure. It is taking pitot pressure and also it is taking static pressure. Now you will question, so why it is taking both the pressure? Because I will tell you why when we will study the instrument in details, but for now just understand this thing. The airspeed indicator is basically the calculation of your dynamic pressure. So as we know that our total pressure is nothing plus dynamic plus static, so now the airspeed indicator is getting both the total pressure and the static pressure. So the total pressure minus your static pressure is nothing but your dynamic pressure, which will give you your airspeed. We will talk this about in detail when we study the airspeed indicator. Whereas the rest of your instrument, whether you talk about your altimeter or you talk about your vertical speed indicator, they both work on the static pressure. They both work on the static pressure, and that is the reason they are only getting static. So the static goes to all the three instrument, but Pitot only goes to your airspeed indicator. So this thing you need to remember. Now what is your alternate static source? What is why we use the Pitot heat, for what purpose? We will talk this in details in the next video. The purpose of today's video was to make you understand what is the dynamic pressure, what is the static pressure, what is the total pressure, and what factors does your static pressure depends upon, which we talked is it depends upon your altitude. The higher you go up, the less is your static pressure. And we have studied the dynamic pressure. Now what, okay, I have missed one point here regarding the dynamic pressure. So have a look here, guys. Now dynamic pressure depends upon what things? Dynamic pressure, we have know that the dynamic pressure is the pressure acting on the aircraft in motion in the air. Now it depends upon two things. It depends upon your density of the air, and it depends upon the speed of the aircraft, or you can say the speed of air. How? Let's talk about it. See, if the density of the air is less, so now as we know density is nothing but mass divided by volume. So now guys, if your density is less, you have less number of molecules in the same column of air. You will be having less number of molecules. Now when the aircraft is traveling in the less number of molecules, it will have less dynamic pressure. It will have less dynamic pressure because no less number of molecules are being hit by the aircraft or being resisted by the aircraft. But if we talk about the higher density, if we talk about the density higher density, so we will be having more number of molecules. So in the more number of molecules, the dynamic pressure will be more because the aircraft will be in the motion. Aircraft will go in the motion in the more number of molecule, and will be having a more resistance, and in turn will be having the more dynamic pressure. And the second parameter on which the dynamic pressure depends upon is the speed of your aircraft. Now, the higher the speed of the aircraft, if it is going with the 90 knots, it will have a certain dynamic pressure, but if it's going at a 120 knots, it will be having more dynamic pressure because it will be it will go through the molecules, or it will create a motion in the air, which is greater than when it is going through the 90 knots. So 120 knots will create more, the aircraft is going through the column of the air with the higher speed will create more dynamic pressure. Why? Because the higher the speed of the aircraft, the more the resistance will be caused by the molecules. The more the molecules it will hit, and more the dynamic pressure will be there. So this is all about your dynamic pressure, guys. Just go through the video once, revise what is dynamic pressure, static pressure, total pressure, and what is your Pitot system. And I have told you about the all the three kinds of pressure, and all the six pack, which instrument uses the gyroscopic principle, and which instrument uses your air pressure principle. So this was all about your static and dynamic pressure. So just to give you, we will uh, I will make another video of the Pitot static. This topic is not yet over. Actually, this is the first topic we are discussing for the instrument navigation, and I will probably finish this part in 3 videos. So this is the first of the videos. And just to give you a glimpse of where the Pitot tube and the static tubes are there in the aircraft, so just have a look, guys. This So majority of you in your training days have flown the Cessna, or the student who have not yet flown will be flying the Cessna soon. So guys, this is your Pitot tube. You can see this tube. This tube is your Pitot tube. Now Pitot tube is placed just under the vents, and Pitot tube will read the sorry let me just take the brighter color. Yeah, that would do. So see, the Pitot tube will be getting both the pressure, means your dynamic pressure as well as your static pressure. So this is your Pitot tube. Now I will show you where is your static tube in the aircraft. So it's not visible in this picture, so let me just add the another picture to show you the static port. Okay, so see, this port is your static port, which this is your static port, which static port to sense the static pressure. Now guys, this static port is on the side of the aircraft. This will be on the side of the aircraft. Why it is on the side of the aircraft, we will learn in the next video, that why the Pitot tube is away from the fuselage and why static port is on the side of the fuselage, what are the errors regarding the Pitot and the static tube, and some important points which is important in terms of the TGC examination and for your ATPL theory. For now, just go through the video once. If you have any doubt, please comment down below in the comment section. I will try my level best to clear all the doubts. For now, just make sure that you know what is the six pack instrument, which instrument uses gyroscopic principle, and which instrument uses your Pitot principle. What is the Pitot principle? What three pressure types: total, static, and dynamic? What is static pressure? What are the properties of static pressure? What things affects the static pressure, which is your altitude? Then what is your dynamic pressure? What properties affects the dynamic pressure? What is your total pressure? Which instrument uses the total pressure, which is your airspeed indicator, and which instrument uses your static pressure, which is your altimeter and vertical speed indicator. So these are the things that I want you to go through, and in the next video we will be talking more about the Pitot static system, which is what happens if the tube gets choked, why the pitot is placed away from the fuselage, why static port is placed on the side of the aircraft, and we're gonna learn certain properties and error regarding the same. So I think I'm gonna make one more video on this topic, and this pitot static will be clear to you guys. And the next topic that we will be picking up in the series of instrument navigation is your airspeed indicator. So this will be our first instrument that we will deal in the six pack. This will be the first instrument we will talk about in detail after we understood the concept of pitot static. So thank you for watching my video, guys. Do comment down below in the comment section whether you like the video or not, what changes you want me to do in my teaching style, or anything, any doubt that is left, you can surely drop down below in the comment section, or I'm gonna drop my WhatsApp number also. You can directly message me and clear your doubt. Thank you so much for watching my video. Take care and have a good day.